All right. So we are live and we are all gathered here today to talk about Sarah Troupe's ServiceNow journey. Just a recap, she is in another industry and she's looking to land that first ServiceNow gig. So in the last episode, we got to know her a bit better, define some goals, and we're already now at the resume review portion of the journey. So just again, who am I? My name is Chris Shu. I am known as the ServiceNow magician in the ecosystem. You know, my personal mission is to deliver ServiceNow solutions that work just like magic. And you can see all the other stuff later. But the main thing, again, is to focus on the podcast's purpose. So in this case, it's to help Sarah land that first ServiceNow role. And we know that there are many, many people in the same boat. So we hope that we're going to help you advance your own journey. And maybe if you're a little further on, even some of these tips can be applied to your current position in the ServiceNow ecosystem to help you land your next desired role. I know that in the previous one, I learned a ton, and I basically have to tear down and redo my whole resume, but in a good way. To deliver better outcomes for myself, I have to describe what I've done in an outcome-based way. With that said, I would like to introduce Robert Fedoruk, who is a titan in the ServiceNow ecosystem. You need to connect with him. You need to make sure that he can help you out. He does offer a variety of ServiceNow services that can help you accelerate your career journey. Now, he does resume reviews. That'll be the focus of today, but he also does other things as well. You can reach out to them. These are paid services. And after going through this outside of the podcast with someone else, I've seen the immediate value that you get out of having him personally review your resume. You may reach out to him on LinkedIn, connect, and you can discuss having those things. I know in the last episode that we filmed just earlier today, some people were already asking about that, Robert. So that's why I wanted to bring it up now. With that being said, Robert is also more of an expert, and I actually wouldn't call myself an expert in this resume process. So if we've ever been working together and you're like, hey, Chris said do A and Robert's saying do B, listen to Robert. He is the authority on this. He has that experience and he's landed people these first roles and he's helped advance others in their journey as well. That's the end of the introduction. We've got a lot to get through today, so I'd like to hand it off now to Robert.
Hey folks, thanks for joining and taking the time to listen. Share. Okay, I just want to verify that this is, what on earth is this? Why do I got this big dark band here?
Oh, yeah. Just download the app.
Yep.
That's fine. We can work with that.
Gosh, that's okay. Just give me 2 seconds, okay? I'm just going to drive me bananas.
Okay. Me too. I would have the same thing.
You probably have activated review tracking on Word. That's what is showing all those comments.
It says something about like downloading Word. I'm like, why would I want to do that?
Yeah.
Okay, that looks a lot better. So let's go back to Zoom. Share screen. Share. Ah, so much better. Okay, is this readable to everybody?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Okay. So I want to start off, just before I get into the details, I want to start off with first principles. Okay, the resume has one and only one objective: to earn you an interview. Okay, it's not necessarily a rapport building exercise, and it is certainly not a biography. It is a highlight reel of what you can do and what you have done to entice me to invite you to an interview. Now, you have 2 levers available to you to do this. Your first lever is having the requisite skill, right? So can I do the things that you want me to do is super important. And one of the levers that I can use in order to get what I want, which is the job. Okay. The second lever that most people rarely even think about, let alone work towards, is how you talk about the things that you can do. And we know for a fact that lever 2 is equally, if not more so powerful than lever 1. Because every day on this earth, people who do not have the skill get what they want anyway. Because they are capable of transmitting a thought, an idea, making somebody else's imagination work for them, capture their mind. And so they think, if I take this person, they're going to get me the things that I want. And I feel it so much in my soul that I'll do that, despite not having seen the fruits of the technical labor. Okay. So you must exercise lever 1, the hard skill, lever 2, the talking about the hard skill. Okay. Now I am the person who's desperately trying to get a ServiceNow resource, desperately trying to find credibility in a literal ocean of non-credible sounding resources. Okay. So a few things about me. I am an actual human being. And so my resume reviews are always optimized for, I'm getting this resume to a person. I'm not here to try and get through applicant tracking systems. I don't know how that world works. And frankly, I don't think anybody else does either. I'm also not very good at government tailored resumes. I don't know how that world works, but I optimize for this resume will go to a human being. Now, human beings are human, which means they always have a limited attention span. Okay. And your resume is going to be in an ever increasing stack of resumes. And so because I have to get through that stack, but reading resumes is not my job. Okay. My job is getting outcomes done. And I need somebody with the ServiceNow stuff to help me do that. So I'm under pressure. I literally don't want to do this job. And so my goal is not how do I reject more resumes? That's not my mindset. My mindset is, please, Lord, please let this be the last resume I have to read. Okay? And who knows how many have come before you? Who knows how awful they were? And who knows how much attention I have left in my attention gas tank before I just tap out. And therefore, I will read precisely to the point where I am bored or I have decided. Boredom puts you in the reject pile. Okay? Decided yes or no, okay, we'll get to that. But if I decide yes, I'm done reading. And I can decide yes off of the summary. I have decided yes off of the summary. I've read the summary. This is so good. Why on earth do I need to read the experience? Get this person to the interview. So everything that it's a paradox, right? Words are the composition of your resume, but words are also your enemy because every word I read is a drop of attention gone, right? So you got to think about everything that you say has to be, again, it's a highlight reel, not a biography. So everything that you say has to feel like a knockout punch. And for those of you on the call, if you've ever watched MMA or boxing, any kind of combative sport, or even competition sport, right? Basketball, football, they're prominent in the Super Bowl, right? When they're advertising the Super Bowl, they are not showing the team eating a balanced breakfast. They are not showing the team running laps, getting their cardio up to shape. They're not showing the team doing push-ups, not showing the team like doing that thing they do where they go through the little tires. I love that, but they don't show it. They show people they show quarterbacks getting tackled and smashed into the ground. They see 1,000-yard passes. They see people running and dodging. It's a highlight reel. And everything that you say must resonate with. And then I did this awesome thing. And then I did this awesome thing. I know you did 10,000 boring things along the way too, but that's not what's going to win you the day. All right. So it's nothing to do with Sarah Troupe's resume specifically. That's just all resumes all the time, everywhere. All right. So let's get into the details. So you always want to just what are you aiming for, right? And you could show me what you're aiming at, and and get my imagine working for you immediately just by telling me how you imagine you at my company, Sarah Troupe, CSA, right? Or ServiceNow expert, okay? Or ServiceNow whatever. The idea is you are a ServiceNow something, aren't you? Right? So say so right away. So name an aspirational title. This is great. I love the fact that you put it on one line. I wish more people would do that because verticality is the enemy, right? Every line I drop is a drop of attention gone. This, I would rather you just embed in a URL, right? Oh, I don't want to do that. You just hyperlink it like that. Bam. And then that way they don't have to like copy paste. They could just control click. Okay. First thing, just on the whole, saving the amount of attention I have, de-wordify everything. Even years later, I still take my resume. I read it once a month just to see if I can peel one more word out. If I can combine two more words with one. So professional summary. Okay. And speaking of summary, the goal of the summary, and I love the fact that you've abstracted it, you've actually written something. But at the end of the summary, I should know what you're capable of and why your past experience makes you an unfair advantage over other candidates. Okay. Now, this is where I find, like, especially when you're transitioning industries, it can be very difficult. So people tend to go to what they believe are high value descriptors of the kinds of people that they are and their character, right? And so I would just make a rule here that just assume that they trust in your character. It's not about your character. It's about what you are delivered. A person like me wants to know two things: the type and scale of problems you can solve. Because my goal is to have you work for me with as little energy from me as possible. You know, if everybody's seen Pulp Fiction, and when the big problem happens, who do they call? The Wolfman. Oh, the Wolfman. Oh, that's all he had to say. Right? The Wolfman's going to take care of it. None of us have to worry about anything. We want you to be the Wolfman. Okay. May have shown my age by referencing Pulp Fiction, but okay. So to that end, words like collaborative, like the only people who aren't collaborative are like off in the mountains, lone wolf preppers, right? Love those people, but those are the people that don't collaborate. Everybody else collaborates every day in every way. But then you say individual contributor. So it's just like, pay very close attention to the words that you use and what they are actually describing. Diverse skill set, but what is it? Like, are you a mechanic, right? An artist, a linguist? It's cool that you have diverse skill set, but really what you're trying to do is convince me that I need you. So really what this boils down to is maybe start with your ServiceNow credentials. Okay. So I would say something like a certified ServiceNow admin with, who's trained multiple users. So that's basically the extent of your experience, right? Is that you've trained them, right? So you leave off with that. So I'm a certified ServiceNow admin, and I have trained this many people over this period of time. It speaks to the impact of what you can do. And then immediately I know something that you can do that I don't have to guess at, that I can leverage you immediately for, right? Then the next part, since you're kind of you're transitioning careers and you do have all this diverse background and stuff, that think about how that gives you an unfair advantage, right? And so speak about your work in that unfair advantage. So I haven't done enough thought, my fault, into how we can turn your past experience into competitive advantage, but it strikes me that you've done the better part of the administrative parts of a business, right? So there's something about, like, you understand how businesses operate. So who better to understand your business needs when they're actually describing it to the ServiceNow team. Do you know that your competition is like far and away your competition is people who are like, please tell me what to do so that I can do it for you on ServiceNow. Okay. But if you have run a business, like you've been the linchpin of all the administrative duties, you understand what it takes to keep this show on the road, right? That's your competitive advantage. The rest of these people, they haven't seen what you've seen. Okay. So I know that was a little bit abstract. If I had a little bit more time, I would have dived a little bit deeper on that. And if you need help afterwards,
that's really good. Yeah.
If you need help afterwards, I can help you craft that whole unfair advantage scenario. But start with your ServiceNow threads and capabilities, then come up behind with your, and by the way, like one of the people in my cohort, she came from the like loan processing industry, right? She's always assessing the financials of people's loans and does all this paperwork make sense? And should we stamp this and say yes? Right. And you would think, what does a loan officer have to do with ServiceNow? It's like, well, for one thing, they understand the value of money and collateral. Right. So she has an unfair advantage over the generic, like fresh out of next gen, fresh out of a boot camp, ServiceNow admin, because they're just thinking in terms of feature functions. But what if you could actually think about bottom line, right? Is this revenue generating? Is it cost prohibiting? Okay. Sorry. I'm kind of,
I was going to add to that. We talking about a loan officer. I was in the closing industry, so I was in that for like, I guess 5 or 6 years. So on the back end of the loan, when it closes, I'm the one who did all the paperwork and the financials and all that. As well as back in 2020, I started my own cleaning business. So that goes into it as well.
That's good. Yeah. And
entrepreneurial anything is fantastic.
That's
like,
right.
You want to know, like if I had my pick, I would just start with people who have entrepreneurial experiences with anything. Because it's just like, you know what I mean? It's a level of problem solving that the rest of the world just doesn't understand. If you tell an entrepreneur this has to get done, it's like, well, it has to get done. There is no, oops, we didn't get it done. There's no such thing. Okay. So if you're entrepreneurial in any way, I would put that in your summary. Like I've ran my own business to this scale. Remember, it's the type of problems you can solve, the scale of problems you can solve. And that just answers all the questions for me in terms of like, well, if I hire her, what is she going to do for me? Shouldn't be a question mark. It should be, this exact thing. Okay. So let's go into the experience. Okay. I have 2 concepts that I preach once we get to the experience part of the resume. First one is a model I created called the hierarchy of interest. Achievements are always more interesting than activities. Activities are always more interesting than responsibilities. Okay, but between you and me and all of us on the call here, nobody actually cares about your responsibilities. Think about every irresponsible parent you've ever met. It's kind of like on your resume, you'd be responsible for your kids. So how come they are that way? Right? But how do you know then I have written down an achievement versus I have written down an activity? And achievements, there's all kinds of models of this across the internet. This is not my model. It's just my favorite because it's the shortest, the XYZ protocol. By doing X, I achieved Y as measured by Z. You also heard the STAR protocol, or there's all kinds of different models, but this is a 3-part model. It's got all the components I want. What did you do to make what effect at what scale? Okay, another model I use here is like, you imagine they were trying to hire the CEO of your life. Okay, now how does a CEO talk about their accomplishments when they're trying to find another C position? Right? Do they say, oh, I use these financial tools to provide quarterly reports? Like, no, how did your leadership change the organization? So you're talking about dollars saved, dollars made, percentages, and time. You always want to try and get to some kind of like impact statement on those 3 things, because that's really what this is all about. Right? Everybody has levers that they push and pull in order to get the business that much better, right? But our lever is ServiceNow. But what was the effect of the levers that we pushed and pulled? Okay. So that that is the most important concept, is think about things in terms of achievements, not activities if you can help it, but certainly activities before responsibilities, and getting down to like X, Y, and Z. Okay. This is just me being picky. Like I don't like too many mixed formats. I love the fact that you have like a unified font and you're not changing fonts all the time. But I just peel out the italics. That's the most pedantic thing I'll say the whole time. Let's get into some of the main bullet points. The first one was decent. It just lacks a Z. It actually lacks a Y too, right? But you did this engaging live demonstrations, but like, what was the net effect of that? Was somebody convinced of something? Did you make a sale? Right? Did your students have an aha moment? And if so, how is that kind of manifested? Okay. This is what I call tool talk. Okay. How would we know that a sculptor is a master sculptor? Would it be because they talk about the tools that they use? A master sculptor certainly would know their tools and know of a variety of tools that you know what I mean? But really, you're going to take one look at that statue and say, holy cow, like that person is a sculptor. And frankly, like I don't know enough about chisels or sandpaper to really appreciate how they got it that way. The thing is, it was that way. So if you find yourself just listing the elements, listing the tools, stop, rewind, think about, but what did I do with them? The X, Y, and Z. Because I used these things, I got this objective met. And this is, I'm going to say it basically over and over throughout this, because we've really got to transform this into like you created some outcomes versus you perform some activities, right? So,
And sorry, I'll just interject
go ahead.
there. This is one of the largest pieces of advice that is going to transform my resume. So if you're listening in and you're like, oh, this is kind of what I did too, just know that it can happen at any level to anybody. The purpose is to recognize it, come up with a plan, and then move forward in a way to improve it. So, a lot of the advice that you're seeing here from Robert is going to help you. It is meant to say, don't do that, what you're doing, move forward here. But if he comes across something that he likes, he's already highlighted a few things. He's going to then, say, this is what I keep and this is what I would change. So the purpose of this is a transformational journey with your resume as well.
All right, I gotta go to the end of this section for just a minute, because I think it will make more sense talking about this and then going through, because by the time I got to the end of this, I kind of understand, like I understand where you're coming from. I understand what it is that you did, but what I got no sense of is your actual ServiceNow build capability beyond the fact that you said words of tools, right? And I would suspect, while there are a lot of positions in the ServiceNow world that are like trainer, right? I would say if you cast your net a little bit wider and just say, I'm a capable builder, and you know this because, right, you can do field stuff as well as training stuff. You see what I mean? So we have to inject more build capability into these things, right? And I'm hoping that you do have stuff that you have built, right, in order to underscore and really get an idea of how to teach people these tools, because you've used them in some kind of context, right? So when you get to things like ability to digitize processes in Flow Designer, including using custom actions, would have been like, I would have gotten the exact same message, but a more powerful image if you told me about a time that you did that. Let me give you an example. I built an application using very complex data structure and Flow Designer, business rules, notifications, and reports in order to manage my raw material, in order to manage my raw materials for my soap hobby production. And I eliminated my batch wastage. Okay. So I know, so if my interviewer was sitting across from me and say, well, shoot, they understand the business consequence of the things, of the tools they were using. That means I don't have to be the go-between between stakeholder and team. Team comes up to me and says, hey, we need some, like, we want to do some, I don't know, physical site security thing. Okay, Robert, you understood that last business team, the soap production team. You knew exactly what they needed. You go talk to that team. I'm busy. Now you have a higher scale of problem you can solve, right? Is it making sense? So it's not that I have touched a screwdriver, that I have touched a lathe, that I have touched a planer. It's that, check out the wainscoting in my living room. Okay. This was a little bit, again, this is still a little bit tool talky, but the managed is the wrong verb. And then taught, they're different enough that if you taught these things, like what would, like, was it evidenced by what the class produced? But again, I think this is tool talky. If that makes any sense. Also, it has this weird kind of, like, if I was a talented ServiceNow person reading this and preparing the interview, it's kind of like, it goes from the very abstract and high level, like subscriptions and upgrades, down to like dot walking, right? Which is a very, very specific interface thing, all the way up to Java. You know, see what I mean? So this needs some work, but I think if you just rethink this entire section in terms of XYZs, even if it's half the length, the XYZs are going to be way more powerful for you. I wouldn't, even though these things exist and we talk a lot about them, we talk about them more in terms of like how it works, not that we do it, because most of the time in the wild, this stuff is automated now. Users, groups, and roles. Usually all that's factored into some kind of ID management system. And ServiceNow is just the recipient of that information. Again, I think if you just talk about the build, I think you can hit the whole, like, the idea that you're interacting with your class and they relied on you and that you were trusted as a teacher. I think that could be handled in one bullet point that speaks to the scale of the operation and how successful you were. So we'd be like, I was an instructor for this many dozen students over this period of time. This percentage of which made it to their goal of getting that first ServiceNow job. That's the outcomes of training, right? Providing feedback only matters if the feedback fundamentally changed things, right? So remember, I was the one that made the suggestion to have this in video so that we could shave 3 weeks off the course, and then the 3 weeks got shaved off the course. Then I'd put it. Otherwise, it doesn't move the needle. So this we've already spoke about. So you have the expertise. You're trusted to train. Just think about that more in XYZ. This is speaking to the words we select. And so I always encourage people to write their resumes. The first draft of a bullet point should have no adjectives and no adverbs in it. Okay? It's just the nouns and verbs that we need. And once it's clear, then embellish, but embellish carefully. There's like a library of words that we've been trained, like we instinctually use them to sound business contextual, that really almost have this kind of uncanny valley. Like I literally read this and I'm like, oh, what does she mean by holistic? Like, I don't understand. And at least for me, being somewhat OCD, it was just like a splinter in my head. So just be careful what you describe and picking the right time and place to adjective and adverb. You want those adjectives and adverbs. want them carefully placed. Develop instructional material for live classes, ensuring instructors have comprehensive resources. This I like. This is like promising. It's got an X and a Y, so you built the materials, and that resulted in better prepared instructors. But do you feel the missing piece? Like, what would life have looked like if that wasn't done? Reverse that, and there's your value statement. Okay. And it kind of like, this is why achievements are better than activities, because developing the instructional materials is an activity, but who knows how good it was. The good instructional materials result in faster deployments, more comfortable TAs, more comfortable instructors, like deeper learning from your students. You just got to find a way to like, how can you actually quantify that result?
Right. And is that making sense, Sarah? Just want to make sure that we're a little interactive with
Yes,
you.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
And please stop me and double click on something if you want to. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. This is where I want to introduce another protocol of mine called So What protocol. And a good way to like kind of troubleshoot your own resume is to like read your own bullet points and then ask yourself, so what? So just think about the verb interacted and worked closely with. Forget all the words afterwards. Interacted, work closely with, so what? Everybody interacts with coworkers. Everybody works closely with somebody. But there was something that we did together that made a difference. That's the important part.
And that's what's going to drive standing out
Yep.
and yeah, covering the detailed stuff so that I go, when I read this, I want to ask you about that, Sarah. So now I have to meet with you so I can find out more.
Yeah. There's two high level concepts I'm trying to like work into my general flow and narrative about this, but like not everybody has seen the movie Inception. Have you seen the movie Inception? And what's that about, right? It's about you plant an idea in somebody's head. And as long as they think it came from themselves, it's invincible. It can't go away. You cannot destroy it, and it can only grow and take up more space from there because they'll tell something about it, and an idea is the most invincible thing that the universe has ever created. And so you have to get my imagination working for you. And so when you're like interacting and work closely with, I just imagine you sitting in a room and talking to people, but I'm not imagining the things that you're talking about having some kind of profound effect that I want for me. Okay, I'm going to just do a couple more and then I'm going to give you a couple examples of XYZ from my world. Okay. This one, by the time you get here, it's basically like, this is another time where you're saying how like your primary experience in ServiceNow is in a classroom environment and helping people get their fundamental knowledge. So again, I think this is just something where strip all that out and hit it with 2 or 3 bullet points as long as they're different XYZs. Okay. Okay. And then again, I can't stress enough, try and get some build experience in there.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be
on that. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Like it. So that soap thing that I told you about is something that I built in 30 minutes. Right. And it's got zero market value, right? Like nobody's ever going to buy that in the wild, but it speaks to an outcome that I can now achieve. So people aren't going to be managing the raw materials for their soap production in the ServiceNow environment, but they may have patterns of solution or patterns of problem that speak to like, oh, we got this loaner laptop request, like everybody's favorite exercise, right? How do you know you have enough laptops left? Right?
How do we buy your soap?
Just DM me. I'll send you some. There's nobody makes money off of soaping. People just get to soap.
That's fair.
People
Okay,
get to soap to survive.
how do we ensure that you don't lose money on your soap by sending it to us then?
Oh, soaping has done so many favors for me over the years. I give it away as gifts to people, and people remember me. It's kind of like what I do instead of a business card.
Oh, that's very cool. Smart
Anyway,
idea.
this is
Another
one of
way
my
to stand
bars.
out.
Okay, so let's, like I said, when I talk, I'm gonna obviously have like higher scale things, but I want you to recognize the pattern, not the scale. Okay, so I'm gonna pull up my resume. Where did that go? Are you guys seeing my resume or still Sarah's?
No, that's still Sarah. So while you get
Okay,
that
that's
going,
good.
so Sarah,
No,
is
I'm
this
not.
kind of ringing true for you? We're still seeing Sarah's, but yeah, while you pull that up, is it ringing
Yes,
true? Is it making
absolutely.
sense? Okay.
I think also like when I went into my personal developer, like I created my cleaning company
Yep.
and everything that went into that. So I think that I need to touch on that instead of just listing everything that I've done.
Yes.
Yep.
So,
I'll tell a couple other stories. So, there's a friend of mine who works at ServiceNow, and um, and before her life at ServiceNow, she was a homemaker, like basically high school to homemaker, right? And that's what she had done for a decade and a bit. And so she was asking, like, what do I know about ServiceNow and what can I build that matters? I don't know anything about business. I've never been in one, right? And I encouraged her to model out how a home runs, because homemaking is, backbreaking work. And it's different kind of work. You think about chores, giving your kids chores, like chores are tasks, but they don't operate like other kinds of tasks because I can't make Monday's bed on Tuesday. I have to make Tuesday's bed on Tuesday. And so by simply building that out, I can talk about different patterns of problems that I've solved with ServiceNow. Okay. They don't even have to be big things. Like I put my coaching cohort through a um revenue inhibiting incidents. Right. I work for a media and advertising company. And if you did an AV incident, like something's wrong with the projector, there were like black helicopters and people scaling down the wall, like smashing through the windows to get to your office as fast as they could, because a projector incident means you're in a pitch meeting with Marlboro and we're going to get or lose a multi-million-dollar account. And so I said, make that in ServiceNow. So used record producers, flow designers, and reports to create a revenue affecting incident management system. Allowed us to figure out the financial consequences of our incidents. You see what I mean? Like, that's not a whole big app, but it's a collection of features to a purpose, to a context. Okay, I'll read a couple of mine. You can kind of get the kind of XYZ pattern. In under 5 days, designed a customer service management app on ServiceNow to replace Salesforce. $150,000 annual license saving, reduce agent training time from months to days. Now, is there any doubt that I know how to build a ServiceNow app in there? None whatsoever. I didn't have to. I could, if I redid this, I might talk about the features we used, maybe. But the fact is that I did stuff on ServiceNow that had a legit business impact. Now my interviewer's imagination is like, holy cow, like you can get that amount of license savings. I just want to get this person out and talking to my stakeholders.
Yeah. And that makes me want to talk to you.
Yep.
Find out more. Get to that.
It colors it in. I don't have to guess. I don't have to ask you. Now I might put you in the interesting pile to interview just on that, so I could say, well, what components of ServiceNow did you use? Right? Replaced HP OVSD with ServiceNow in 3 months, deployed incident problem change and a globally scaled service catalog with 100 items. Okay, that talks about the things that I did, but the Y and the Z is like deployment in 3 months. Right? Okay, so that's kind of putting the pattern out there. How to think about even small exercises as having XYZs in and of themselves. And it just it makes a much more interesting picture. Okay, so then we get down here. So it's all in the same family of feedback. So you precisely manage assignments and enforce timelines. And then, but you say stuff like contributing to the team's productivity and goal achievement. Contributing is a weak variable because it's abstract. But this tells me that we know this was for productivity and we know it was for goal achievement. So how could you reframe that in XYZ? I'll give you an example here. Like I've had a lot of people that worked on the service desk and only the service desk, like high school or college to service desk. That's the only thing they've done. Now they have this opportunity to take a shot at ServiceNow. Robert, what do I do? Like, I don't have agency. I just answer the calls, right? I just do the process. How well did you do the process? Were you nailing your SLAs? Yes. 100% SLA achievement. That's an accomplishment, even though it's a sustaining force, not a creative force, right?
And just a
CSAT
couple.
score.
Oh,
Go
sorry,
ahead.
finish. No, finish.
CSAT score is another one. Did you maintain a high CSAT score? Were you the person people went to, right? When they needed, like, so when someone said, oh, what do we do now? Like, were you that person? All of those things can be expressed as XYZ. So if they had goals to be achieved and they had a productivity measure, maybe just twist it around in terms of like, what was it and did you achieve it or did you exceed it?
Yep. And just my first part of my IT journey was help desk. And early on, it was help desk for Best Buy. So you can move from that to the ServiceNow space, and then from there you can advance within it. So anybody that's in that current spot, you can advance through it. And also just a shout out to your last example where we're saying, you know, hi mom, and all the moms are great and all the dads are great in the world, and all of that stuff too. So, and hi Darren, that's my brother. So just in case they're watching.
Okay. This is another kind of like watch your verbs facilitated. This is tool talk, but it's kind of, gosh, I hope this isn't going to come out the way I want it to, but I'm just going to say it anyway, and we can kind of see if we can get the spirit of it. You got to separate the impressive from the mundane, right? So are you an Outlook power user? Yes, I'm absolutely an Outlook power user. I know more about Outlook than 90% of the world, but so what? Right? Did it matter? Did you revolutionize people's mail productivity? Right? Or something like that. Like it's got to squeeze an XYZ out. Otherwise, it's just, yeah, I mean, like, I'm a Camtasia pro. I know more about Camtasia than most Camtasia users, but this got nothing, like it doesn't help me on my resume for ServiceNow stuff at all. Streamlined operations. This was super promising. Like I hope this gets changed around into an XYZ and moves straight to the top, because if you're streamlining an operation, you're taking energy out of the system. You're making the whole system run just as hard, just as fast, just with less input, which is awesome. Everybody wants that. It's the next best thing to somebody handing you money as extra profit. Okay, so I would want to see like a more specific, quantification of the streamline, your Y and the Z. Okay, and like you always know that you're over the target, but you're not going to hit it when you're using words like efficiency and effectiveness. Okay. Those are like the world's favorite words with business, but they're false friends. You're not saying anything profound, right? By saying increased effectiveness, but effectiveness is doing the right thing. So what was it like going from wrong to right thing, or right thing to even more right thing? Efficiency is even harder, because efficiency is like, did I do the right thing with less resource? Right. And it tends to only come out in the wash when you're dealing with like high volumes of stuff. So if I have like 10,000 incidents a month and I shave 5% off that could afford me another person on my help desk, right?
Just
Or
a
something.
time check. We are.
We
13
are
more minutes.
okay. 13 more minutes. So, anyways, I think you're getting the theme now, right? And so you can basically apply this to all of the points. This again, we got efficiency. Just efficiency is your keyword. Rethink this. Get specific about the results. This I usually combine just to save verticality, but you don't have a problem because you're only at 2 pages. So I just say education and certification and just bullet point all of it. Also, this is dead ringer. This screams, I am a new ServiceNow person. Okay.
So
you say more. by leaving
that
out.
again is an example of where I kind of said, hey, put this on to fill it out. Whereas you, as the authority in this area, are providing better advice.
Yeah.
So, Sarah, sorry, I'm learning too. Okay.
So you just got like, sometimes I know it's hard, right? You just got to role play, and it's just like, what would this be telling me about you? And this is really, this is like a balanced breakfast level of achievement. So you can take that off. I'm not saying don't put your microcerts on by all means, but make sure that are microcerts that reflect capability. Right. So I would do flow designer. I put the virtual agent one on there for sure. The PA one for sure. If I had to, so just assess them in terms of like, was this something ServiceNow made me do? Because they need to know that I understand the interface as even a basic user, or is it something that actually showcases capability? All right. And the last point, I love the fact that you put this at the bottom of the resume, because a lot of people put them at the top. But remember, every word I read is a drop of attention gone. And invoking the names of things does not invoke the credibility or my imagination of you doing the thing, right? And so I did a lot of, like, I've always wondered why this has such a contention with it. Like, there's so many resume people who are like, no, you got to put the keyword stuff on there. And whenever I read one of these, I'm like, I got exactly nothing out of it. And so it's always bothered me, Robert Fedoruk, like, why is there a contention? Like, where did this thing come from to begin with? The only thing I can think of is I see this a ton for like hardcore pro code developers, right? Like if I'm going to go to Google as a developer and they're listing out all the frameworks that they have developed in, forget the solutions. I just want to know, like, they're probably looking for somebody who's got this specific version of Angular JS. And if you don't have that, forget about it. Don't care about anything else. And so I think for certain professions, this thing works very well when you're in some kind of very deep, nuanced tech, or its mechanical equivalent, right? Like maybe I'm an oil rig worker and I've used this specific brand of wellhead or whatever, you know what I mean? Or I work on this make and model of cars only.
And
I
these
think,
types of things are opportunities where you may have a specific resume that you tailor to a specific job. So, like Robert said, if I'm applying for a specific role at Google or anything along those lines, I might have to list those specific things.
right.
And you may not do that if you're applying to other places. So, it's okay to have those unique resumes for those targeted ones if it adds value
Yeah.
and you
It's,
can communicate the outcomes.
for my money, and again, optimizing for a human being is going to read this. I don't know if this has ever made the difference or even like weighted the dice in any direction. I think it's just words. And especially when, like, remember, you got to like eliminate the mundane. So everybody's a Microsoft Office expert, like everybody. And then some of it is self-assessments of character, like organizational teamwork and adaptability. It's like, sure, but how has that ever made the difference? Right? Analytical thinking. It's just, you can see why these skills would be like hard skill things. The
So
only thing, go ahead.
I was gonna say, whenever I was filling this out, I kind of felt like all that should have been listed under the experience. So I feel like it's just kind of redundant.
Some of it is
Okay.
like some problem solving is just a very large abstraction of something you can get way more mileage by specifically talking about the stuff you've done, right?
Yes.
The only one that stood out to me is like, oh, well, I want to know more about that is project management. Like,
Okay.
have you like PMBOK project management, or just you were the person who had to get it done and you did it? Do you understand what I mean?
Yes.
Okay, so I would like, you might take this out, add a bullet point somewhere about a project where you manage cost, schedule, scope, and resources to achieve the outcome. Let me give you a quick example of that from mine. Okay, so in our last call, if you watch that one, we talked about, like, you don't just say, I manage cost, schedule, scope, and achieve the outcomes that I was told to, right? I did as I told, is anathema to ServiceNow work. Okay. So here's a project I did. So I secured $300,000 in funding for a re-architecture project in a tight year, established alliances with unrelated stakeholders to back the project, led a team of 5 developers as a principal architect, replaced current solutions with a service-focused architecture on time, on budget, 0 downtime at cutover. Okay, so that is, if somebody says, have you ever managed a big ServiceNow project? That's what I tell them. Like, does that sound like I managed a big ServiceNow project? More than me telling you I managed a big project, right? So anyways, that was the most promising one I saw out of here. Everything else, I just don't like. Again, it's not utilizing my imagination. I can't picture you doing this and the value, like I can't see the value at the end of it. So you could easily like take this out and add another bullet point or 2 of XYZs up top. Okay. 10:53. I made better time this time, Chris.
Yeah. Okay. So this was all great. And I hope that everybody that's listening in right now or that watches the video later sees the specific help that Robert can offer. So your resume is as unique as you are and as unique as the jobs you're applying to. So you definitely can reach out to him. This is some of the custom value that you're going to get by working with him. It's absolutely worth it. I've gone through the journey with him with someone else outside of this, like I mentioned earlier. So I just want to make sure that everybody recognizes, this is a valuable paid service that's available. And Sarah, now we've got a few minutes. If you have specific questions for Robert, now's your chance. But know that the 3 of us are going to continue the journey until you get a resume that is Robert Fedoruk fully approved. So just want to ask a question if you want and go from there.
I don't think I have any questions. But I will say that it's kind of eye-opening. I kind of would take, what the applications would say, and then I would kind of try to apply that to my resume. And I see now just, how I can recreate my resume to be able to land a job. So I appreciate that.
Great. Okay. Well, we appreciate everyone joining us. We appreciate Robert and you, Sarah, as well, being open and transparent with this part of the journey. I hope it's helping everybody that's listening in and that you're able to use some of these tips to help advance your own ServiceNow career. With that said, Robert, any closing words, any other things that you need to?
No, best of luck to you, Sarah. And I can't wait to see V2. Be sure to send it to me when that happens. And I'll just, I'll do another note taking for you. Okay.
Excellent. Really appreciate it. Thanks again. I hope everybody has a happy Friday and we will see you all at the next episode. Thanks again.